Welcome to Tibet This Week, where we bring you a weekly news edition on His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Tibet and Central Tibetan Administration. These are the headlines. His Holiness the Dalai Lama congratulates Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney on his party's general election victory. Sikyong Penpa meets prominent leaders in US, begins month-long visit to North America. Sikyong Penpa and Central Tibetan Administration pray for Pahalgam victims. European Parliament chairs call for independent probe into suspicious death of Tulku Hungkar Dorje. CTA leadership meets with delegations of Friedrich Naumann Foundation. European Parliament calls for the release of the 11th Panchen Lama. Representative Thinlay Chukki meets Czech Republic officials. Representative Namgyal Choedup speaks on Voice for the Voiceless. Office of Tibet DC participates in 18th annual roll call for nation's wreath-laying ceremony. Representative Tsering Yangkey visits Ireland to renew engagement on Tibet. His Holiness the Dalai Lama has written to Mark Carney, Prime Minister of Canada, to congratulate him on his party's victory in the general election under his leadership. His Holiness expressed his admiration for the country for its multicultural society, vibrant democracy, and thanked the government and the people of Canada for their continued support and assistance to the Tibetan people. This week, Sikyong Penpa held a series of high-level meetings in the US Capitol Hill. Sikyong met with Representative Michael McCall, former chair of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, followed by a meeting with the current chair, Representative Brian Mast. A meeting with a long-time Tibet supporter, Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi, also took place. Sikyong held separate meetings with U.S. Representative Jen Schakowsky, U.S. Representative Young Kim, U.S. Senator Jackie Rosen, the President of the National Endowment for Democracy, Damon Wilson, and with members of the Select Committee on the Communist Party of China. Sikyong met with President and CEO of Radio Free Asia, Bei Fang, along with Chief Communications Officer Rohit Mahajan and members of the RFA staff at their headquarters. Sikyong's visit to the United States, Canada and Japan this time is scheduled to last for about a month. The significant diplomatic engagement comes at a critical juncture for the Tibetan cause amidst evolving geopolitical dynamics and recent shifts in the U.S. foreign assistance policies. Sikyong seeks to underscore that U.S. support for the Tibetan people should not be viewed merely through the lens of humanitarian assistance. Rather, the Tibetan issue is inherently linked to American strategic interest, particularly in the Indo-Pacific region, and is reflective of the values of the United States upholds. On his official X platform, Sikyong Penpa mourned the lives lost in the terror attack in Pahalgam, Jammu and Kashmir, that claimed the lives of 26 people and injured 17 people. On Friday last week, Central Tibetan Administration held a prayer service expressing solidarity with their families. Prayer services were held in Tibetan settlements in India as well. The chair of the European Parliament's Subcommittee on Human Rights, member of European Parliament Monir Satori, and the chair of the Delegation for Relations with the People's Republic of China, MEP Engin Irulu, have jointly addressed a letter to the Chinese ambassador to the European Union concerning the suspicious death of prominent Tibetan Buddhist leader Tulku Hungkar Dorje. In parallel, the chair of the Subcommittee on Human Rights has sent a separate letter to the Vietnamese ambassador to the EU reflecting similar concerns. The chairs call on both the Chinese and the Vietnamese authorities to ensure a transparent, independent and impartial investigation to determine the circumstances of Tulku Hungkar Dorje's disappearance and the cause of his passing. On Monday this week, a delegation from the Friedrich Naumann Foundation, South Asia, met with officiating Sikyong Tomageri at the Kashak Secretariat and engaged in a meaningful discussion on the governance and the Tibetan cause. The FNF team also visited the Tibetan Parliament in exile, met with Deputy Speaker Tsering and the Standing Committee members. The delegation comprised of Dr. Carlson Klein, Regional Head of the FNF South Asia, Wade Tengler, Co-founder and Member of Parliament, the NEOS, Elena Fink-Troschel, MDL, member of Baden-Württemberg's State Parliament, along with other members of FNF. On Friday last week, on the occasion of the 36th birthday of Gedun Chogyam Nyima, the 11th Panchen Lama of Tibet, several members of the European Parliament joined Representative Friedrich of the Office of Tibet, Brussels, and EU Advocacy Officer Thinlay to demand the Chinese government for his release and to immediately disclose his whereabouts. The European Parliamentary Group for Tibet has also tabled a written question to the High Representative on the Panchen Lama. A Tibetan delegation led by Representative Thinlay Chukki, alongside Tibet Brief 2020 author Michael van Walt van Prague and UN Advocacy Officer Pinso Topke from the Office of Tibet in Geneva held a series of high-level meetings in Prague with officials from the Czech Ministry of Foreign Affairs and key policy institutions. The delegation met with Barbara Cardona-Sevcikova, head of the International Organizations Unit, Dr. Hanna Brodska, UN Human Rights Agenda Coordinator, and Ivana Grolova from the Unit for Strategy and Analysis. This was followed by a meeting with Robert Rihag, Special Envoy for Holocaust Issues, Interfaith Dialogue, and Freedom of Religion. They also met with Czech Senator Pavel Fischer, former director of the STEM and current member of the Forum 2000 conference. In a separate meeting, the delegation led by Representative Chukki met with Zdeněk Bikanek, Foreign Policy Advisor to the Speaker of the Chamber of Deputies of the Czech Republic. Last Saturday, Representative Dr. Namgyal Choedup of Office of Tibet DC spoke on His Holiness the Dalai Lama's latest book, Voice for the Voiceless, at the Jifang bookstore in Washington, D.C. He explained that His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama became a beacon of hope and courage during the darkest period in Tibetan history for many generations of Tibetans. He further explained the 4 commitments of His Holiness. The same day, Secretary Tsering and Churim Gyatso, Chinese liaison officer from the Office of Tibet DC, participated in the 18th annual roll call for Nations Wreath-laying ceremony organized by the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation based in Washington, D.C. The event commemorates those who have suffered under communist regimes worldwide. Representative Tsering Yangkey of the Office of Tibet London visited Dublin aimed at renewing engagement with Honourable Malcolm Bryan, TD of Fianna Fáil, the leading party in the current ruling coalition, and members of the Tibetan community and Tibet support group. The meeting served as an opportunity to establish initial contact and begin a new phase of working together on issues concerning Tibet. Afterwards, Representative Tsering Yangkey met informally with members of the Tibetan community at a local cafe. On Sunday last week, she also attended the 12th annual Tibetan flag raising ceremony in Milton Keynes. That is all for Tibet this week. See you next time.